If you're enjoying the Health Geeks Book Club podcast, we'd appreciate if you hit the subscribe button, leave a like, rating, or review, whichever your preferred podcatcher platform allows.
This edition of our podcast is brought to you by 360 Health and Well Balanced Nutrition.
Welcome to the Health Geeks Book Club podcast. Listen in as Kristen Norton and Eleanor Russell review all those great health and wellness books you've been wanting to read or you have read and want to talk about. Here's Kristen and Eleanor.
It's awfully hard to stop talking about the reading that we've done. So this week we wanted to continue a conversation and weave some sort of loose ends together for us and maybe you out there. And we're hoping that we're provoking ideas with you. There was a book that we reviewed not too long ago called Unwinding Anxiety. And I was so excited because I have a listener that contacted me and said, I ordered the book. It came in. I'm reading the book. I've had other people on our podcast mention that in the Facebook social media group. If you haven't joined that and want to start a conversation, please do. It's called the Health Geeks Book Club Podcast on Facebook. But Kristen, you were saying something about unwinding anxiety.
Yes, it's been one of the books that I've recommended most to people. And
why is that?
So many reasons. Well, first of all, on the podcast, I was saying, wow, I'd love a peek into his app. One of his apps that he was using, he has 3 different apps. And then I went onto his website and I was looking at the Map Your Mind because I wanted to print that out. I was thinking about it on a walk. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I'm going to go map my mind. Mm-hmm. And found that he had a course that was free for health professionals on mindfulness. So, yes, sign me up. I want to dive even deeper into mindfulness. And I get an email, and then he says, oh, by the way, we have these apps, and as a health provider, you can try these out for free and take a peek in them. And I'm like, well, cool. That's what I wanted. And so he has an app on emotional eating.
Oh, good.
He has an app on smoking cessation and anxiety. And so, you were saying, well, he talks about our cell phones being so bad.
And then he makes an app.
And then he has an app.
to treat the problem. And I'm thinking, that sounds oxymoron-ish or something.
So I was really intrigued. But I love the app because it prompts you. Remember how he was saying that like unexpected prompts are more interesting to us? Mm-hmm. Well, it just randomly will prompt you and say, it's time for a mindfulness moment. Take 30 seconds and listen to everything that you hear and notice how easy it is that you don't have to do the work to listen. It comes naturally. And just that's one of the examples of just little mindfulness breaks that he prompts you to do. And I'm loving it. Mm. And I'm telling everybody about it and recommending the apps, and just his resources are awesome, let alone the book, right?
Yeah.
So many great tips in the books. And then he has even more resources to help you implement it. So
maybe that's a good use of the technology.
I think so, yeah.
And when I was asking, when we were reading the book and talking about it, I said something about Noom. And you said, oh, don't get me started. And I said, I want to know more about that. So can you tell me more? Because it's an app, as I understand it.
It's an app.
She wants to know more about why you were talking about, not that she wants to know.
No, yeah.
Right. So
Your
one
reaction.
thing I like about Noom is they do talk about the psychology of eating a little bit, and they talk about nutrient density, right? So we want to focus on foods that have more nutrients per weight than calories per weight. But the bottom line is they tend to recommend just about the same calorie level for everybody, and it's lower than what I would recommend. Mm-hmm. Some of the nutritionists that work for them are registered dietitians, but I don't think you have to be. So it depends on your coach, what kind of level of coaching you're going to get from them. And there was one other thing. So they label their foods as like red, yellow, and green. And in one sense, I think that's an interesting concept. But when you lean too heavily on that and you don't know why those are like that, or you don't have the further education or a knowledgeable coach, then you get caught up in like, oh no, I'm eating all red foods, they must be bad. But a red food could be something that's just both nutrient and calorie dense. So like salmon, for instance, is high in calories but also very nutritious for you. So I think in those areas it oversimplifies things. It oversimplifies calorie intake and categorizing foods in those levels, and for that reason, I think it's not
as helpful
as it needs to be for all people.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is that you should just be mindful. You're not opposed to using it, but using it correctly.
Or with...
I have some clients who use Noom and they see me. So, make sure you just have the expert person on your side instead of, I don't know. For some people, I've heard that it works well, but it's just not for everybody. So,
okay.
Go to wellbalancednutrition.com and you can get very personalized expert advice.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, we also, talking about this digital stuff, I happen to wear one of these tracking wristband things because I do want to be more active than I am. And the prompt that you're talking about that, what's the author's name of Unwinding?
Dr. Judd.
Yes, Dr. Judd. It says this prompt thing out of unexpected is more interesting to us. And so my wristband will every now and then say, hey, you need to move.
Right.
And I like that. Well, when I don't have the wristband on, sometimes my wrist tingles. So Tim had an idea about that.
Yeah,
because I thought, am I making this up, or do I feel like I have my watch on and I don't?
That happens to me too.
Yeah, it's just, I just call it like phantom vibrations because I keep my phone, if it's not beside me, it's in my front right pocket. So sometimes I'll feel my hip or upper thigh vibrate, and I'm like, oh, I got a call. But my phone is actually next to me, like on my left side.
Yeah.
And I'm like, So, yeah, I mean, and that's a lot of people have talked about that over the years, but I call it phantom vibrations because, I mean, I think it's a neurological response to something that's not actually happening.
Well, I saw a very interesting demonstration of how the brain can be tricked, where they took a fella and put his hands in front of him, and then they take the one hand away and put it on the other side of a barrier and put an artificial hand, right hand, where the other one was. And then they start stroking these hands and the other hand, and the brain says, oh, I feel that. Well, then they quit touching the real hand and touch the fake hand, and the guy says, yeah, I feel that. And you're going, oh, that's freaky. So I think that might be what's going on in this, as well as our brain is being acclimated to that thing being there.
Well, our brain also, because I'm a user of the Oculus VR.
Yeah, the
so
VR.
Just the hearing stuff, if you close your eyes and you just listen to the sounds, it's still a sensory thing that tricks your mind into thinking things are happening. I have to reach over and grab the wall to hold it. If I'm like on something that's like skydiving, I can skydive from this. Yeah. I have to reach over and touch the wall to make sure that I know. And even if I'm playing something and I'm standing over a chasm, I'm like, oh God, and my stomach starts turning.
I put one on one time, and that's the exact sensation I had. It's like, where is the floor? Oh, it's bizarre. Yeah, so knowing that our brains, which is what he talks about in that Unwinding Anxiety, is, it's your brain. It's the way it works. Stop yourself and say, oh, my brain's just acting funny right now.
Yeah.
I don't have to pursue what it's saying to me.
My brain's always acting.
If you can stop yourself. And he had several examples of people learning how to say those words. Oh, it's just my brain. Mm-hmm. And then not feeling bad about, that feeling of good and bad, which you talk about in food, is not a good place to be, I don't think, where we're
it
labeling.
sets you up for self-judgment.
Yeah. That doesn't create a positive, going forward, hopeful attitude.
Right.
If you're feeling like there's no way out, I'm stuck with this, my brain's broken, so hey.
And I think that's the cool thing about mindfulness, and the hard thing about it is we're hearing more about it, more and more people are trying it. And yet it can be easy to judge ourselves or to think we're not doing it right. Right? Because we're like, oh, well, it's my brain, but why is my brain doing that? Or, oh, great, now I've identified this habit loop. I'm so bad, I can't get out of it.
Yeah.
Or we have people who are like, I could meditate, but I can't slow down my mind. Well, you don't have to slow down your mind. It's not about stopping all the thoughts, because that's impossible.
I had an experience with that yesterday. I was doing a 30-minute exercise with some folks, and we were quiet and trying to do the mindfulness thing. And all these crazy ideas were going through my head, and I was like, oh, yeah, I got to get that book read. I got to be over there. And then I found myself observing that, which is where you want to be.
Right.
Is saying, oh, that's just a thought I'm having. Watch it go. And it went, and then I tried to focus back on my breath. And feel the air come in and then pass to my throat and out and make a circle back. So anyway, I was feeling very comfortable in that process because so often I have not been able to watch the thought. I get involved in the thought and then have another thought about that thought. And then it's that whole dynamic of, I can't do this. I can't meditate.
Right.
But I think with practice is what they're telling us. The more you do it, and we're going to be reading a book about yoga, and I think the little bit I understand about that is that yoga prepares the body for the meditation, and so I will be interested to see what our book alludes on that.
Yeah, because I have never been able to. For one, I'm ADHD, so my mind never stops. It's a family curse as well. But whenever it's time for clear your mind, and I'm always like, my mind clear? Have I stopped thinking about stuff?
No.
Ooh, squirrel. And that's just how it always is for me. And I've never been able to clear my mind.
Monkey brain, huh?
Meditation to me is like reading for pleasure. It escapes me completely. So.
Well, and I think that's why I like Unwinding Anxiety and Dr. Judd's resources so much, because he makes mindfulness feel so practical and feel doable, right? It's broken down into such small moments that, we can build up our mindfulness. We don't have to
do 30 minutes to start with.
Right.
Yeah.
What does the app cost if you're not a health professional?
It's $25 a month, or I think you can buy the whole year or unlimited for $100 and something.
Okay.
So it's reasonable. And, I always look, okay, are they going to lock me in and make it really hard to cancel? But canceling is really easy, and you can cancel at any time. So it's like he starts you off in this chunk of videos and segments that it'll only let you watch a little bit at a time. So I think it's 5 to 10 minutes a day.
Okay.
And then you can continue because there's a community aspect of it, or you can move on. So I think that's why it's a monthly.
Okay.
Yeah.
So many of these authors that we've been reading do have additional resources for us, and I think that is something that we're discovering in our journey here on the Health Geeks Book Club podcast. And Amanda Peters, that did the Feng Shui, has a very active Instagram account as well, and you've mentioned some other authors. We read a book by Kendra Adachi called The Lazy Genius Way, and she has a new book out called The Lazy Genius Kitchen. And she happened to be in my town at a local bookstore that hosts book signings, like you see on TV all the time. So I went to this thing, and I had a really interesting evening with a lot of people that like to read books, like you guys out there. You're our book club. We hope you're reading with us. We hope that we're bringing titles to you that are interesting. And I will say that Kendra in person was very engaging, and she was applying those principles from the Lazy Genius, those 13 principles that she had, to your kitchen. And the audience had questions for her, and they were good questions, and there were a lot of young people in the audience. And what I found was they're struggling in the kitchen, which is what my experience at 360health4u.com has shown me, is that this generation of women coming into their first homes, they don't have a lot of experience with how to take care of a home. And in the kitchen, they've been acclimated because they probably grew up in 2 working parent homes, fast food, maybe not as nutrient dense as we'd like to think about. But they're being educated that they need to pay attention to that, so they're struggling on how do I be the perfect person in my home and make everything wonderful for my husband and kids or my partner or whatever. And it's challenging for them. So a lot of these books that we're reading, I think, are giving people tips on do it slow, start small, you'll get there. But here's some things we've learned along the way.
That's what I love about the books we read.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think we're going to get some other good books. Do you have anything else to say in this? Because we're trying to, in our these episodes where we're not really taking a single book, we're trying to follow up what happens in our lives from having read this book, and maybe have just a general conversation with you guys out there. We'd love questions or notes about what we've said, or you don't like what we've said. Let us know that too.
Yeah, so many times the takeaways that we get that we can share with you come, and it's after a podcast has been recorded or a book's been discussed, and so many times these books come full circle around, and this one's connected to this one, and that's the neat part of wellness books.
Right.
So
the 360 angle.
And also, I'm sure if the listeners have recommendations they want you to read a book, they should send that to you via how's the best way?
Probably in the Health Geeks Book Club podcast Facebook group would be a great place to log that.
It's a Facebook page, right?
And it's public. It is public, so you can ask to join, and we will let you in.
Yeah.
So you want to tell them what you do?
I'm Kristen Norton, one of the 3 registered dietitians at Well Balanced Nutrition. So if you're tired of feeling confused and overwhelmed by nutrition advice, we invite you to check out our website and visit our free monthly webinars we're doing, where you can get practical and simplified tips from nutrition experts. We're at wellbalancednutrition.com. How about you, Eleanor?
360health4u.com is my website with all sorts of ideas out there. Links to this podcast if you're having trouble finding it or sharing it. That's a good way to share it. Product recommendations, and I'll love to start a conversation with you.
We both have fabulous resources on our websites, so we really encourage you to visit both of them and to be a part of our Health Geeks community as well, because if you're into these podcasts, there's so much more for you that you'll love. So thanks for listening.
Go have a good day.
The views and opinions stated in this podcast are solely those of the contributors and are not necessarily those of our distributors or hosting company. This podcast is copyrighted, and no part can be reproduced without the expressed written consent of Kristen and Eleanor.